Yo, what's going on, E7 fam? Pat here, back with another Sue Talk. You guys seem to really like this series. It's where I bring on guests from the Epic 7 community and we talk about stuff that we normally wouldn't in other videos. So in this one, I'm joined by one of the coolest people I have met this year, one of my good buddies. You know him, you all obviously love him. That is Mr. DivineShadow. You good, Divine?
Yeah, not me. I'm DivineShadow. Hi. I'm waving in front of a live studio. It's me, DivineShadow. You called me over. I'm your good friend, Pat. Nothing more, nothing less, because being your friend is a hell of a treat itself. And we're debuting this after the spookiness of Halloween. So after everyone's had their frights and their terrible scares over, now the only frights we have to look forward to is horrible conversations at Thanksgiving dinner. So
Oh,
I'm here to lighten the mood.
and E7's global anniversary, but that's for another
E7's
time.
global anniversary. Yeah, that's so many treats around this time of the year, huh?
So the topic of today's video, seeing as Divine is a writer, and I'll let him talk more about that. We're going to talk about Epic 7's narrative today, both the positives and negatives of it. But before we get into it, like I said, we'll let Divine talk about his experience and why he is the man for the job to explain to you the shortcomings of this story.
Yeah. Well, yeah. So as Sue was saying, I'm not even a writer. I think I like to call myself primarily a narrative designer, and that's really the perspective you have to have while working in games. Because I've worked in comics, I've worked in games, I've worked in animation before. And throughout those mediums, you have to tell a story, but in games, you have to design a story, and that's a very different thing. Something you have to consider as you go through is that people are going to be interacting, and people have expectations. A lot of times we talk about this in the industry, and I like to say, what are the expectations or what are the promises you've made for your player, right? And Epic 7 makes a lot of those promises, and a big part of narrative design is making sure you keep them, right? If you show a big, stern, muscle-bound man who is belligerent and offensive and has a cool kit, he should be useful in content. So he should be if he stands there and he's boisterous. He comes out, he's just like, "Hey, listen up, you little brats. My name's Kane, and I've got a little lesson for you." He should probably do something in the game.
Oh,
And
man.
every
It's
unit
very
has
meta.
expectations like that. And sometimes when you get a unit, they make expectations of their own, right? You don't look at a unit like AOL and think, this is the end. This is what I'll see when I die. This will be the last horrific image given to me before my passing. But eventually, after her holding one of your bands hostage for a whole year in the game, that's what you eventually think of her. And then you can lean into that narrative, right? You could even make a cool Sinful Angelica skin that kind of leans into that idea a little bit, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, lots of things like that.
Okay.
Yeah.
So I guess we'll move on to the next point then. It's kind of what you were already talking about, but like, what specifically do you think makes a good narrative? Is it just like the experiences that we talked about? Like, what is the standard that DivineShadow sets for a narrative in video games, seeing as you are from the games industry?
That's a little bit confusing, Sue. I thought this podcast was supposed to be an hour, but you
Oh.
actually questioned that means we're going to be here for 3. I'm a little bit confused as to what the purpose is here. Because, I have had conversations with other developers where I've talked about narrative design for so long. Their response is, I have a family. Can I go home now? Like I could talk about this all day, but let me sum it up in a couple of quick points. Just for everybody. There's 2 things I'll say about it, right? The first thing I'll say is that for narrative design to be effective, it should serve a purpose. And this is something I like to do a lot with my own writing. And Epic 7 actually does this pretty well as well. You have a large cast of characters in Epic 7. And I think a lot of writers trick themselves into thinking, my narrative needs to say something, it needs to have an impact on the reader. No, it doesn't. Not every character, not every moment is going to be for every player. But for the person that gets excited over that moment, that should be their favorite thing, right? There are people who will be attracted to Mort and the way he antagonizes the other heroes and the way he rises them up to become a bastion of strength that will finally flood the walls that is his stalwart identity and finally put him in his grave that he's longed for after years, millennium even, of waiting for both conquest and death itself to take him, right? And
Yeah.
then there are the people who want to go on the fun date with the cute characters in the swimsuits in the summer, right? Those are your audience, right? They both exist. Give them the best of both worlds, right? Service them both. And you don't always have to service one, but you should always write content with an idea of like, this kind of player is going to love this. It's the same thing with gameplay, right? You want to make gameplay or characters that are appealing to the cleavers, that are appealing to the people who want to play a little bit slower, to the degenerates who have lost a severe family member and now take revenge on all of us by playing Control. You want to appeal to all those types of players, right? It's the same thing with the narrative. It's no different. And that's why narrative design and game design really aren't all that different at the end of the day.
Okay.
The second thing I'll say about is that the game design and the narrative design need to go hand in hand. And I'll give you an excellent example of this from one of my favorite titles. I know, sorry, you want to speak here for a while, but this is why you shouldn't have brought me on and asked these questions. It's your fucking fault.
Don't worry about it. I'm
Xenoblade
just
Chronicles.
learning.
Yeah, Xenoblade Chronicles. You've heard of it, right?
Yes. I tried playing the first. I tried playing the first one. I believe it was on the Wii U, correct?
Yeah, it's on the Wii U, and then somehow they put it on the 3DS. I think the only the new Nintendo 3DS, not the normal 3DS, is like one of those. I told you I could do this all day.
Yeah. Okay. No, I tried playing it, and my thoughts was there's too much to do in this game, but this soundtrack is amazing. That was my
soundtrack slash.
Yeah, that was all I kept thinking about. Was like I would get into fights and I'd be like, I have no idea why I'm fighting this thing or what I'm even doing. I'm just pressing buttons. But the music's good.
The music's good. So, I don't know if you got far enough in, but, in Xenoblade Chronicles, your character has a sword that can see the future and allows them to be another swordsman with another down B that counters your enemies, right?
Yeah.
Standard JRPG nonsense, right? A lot of times, people don't mix their game design and their narrative too well. And something that works out pretty well in Xenoblade Chronicles is that your sword can see into the future. Well, what does that do for me in gameplay? Well, it means some of your moves work in a certain way. It means the battle system works in a way where you can tell when an enemy is going to do a big move. So you're like, everybody, you better tank down. That guy has 3 guns and they're all charging, right? But most importantly, when you pick up a useless item on the ground, you'll see a flash forward to somebody being like, I need 10 of those hyper-specific things you just dropped from an enemy. And then when you go to a store and you try to sell them, it'll be like, hey, remember, you're going to need this for a future quest you haven't even gotten yet. So maybe keep 10 of them because you're going to need 10. And it reduces one of the most frustrating parts. Yeah, because every RPG gamer's been there where you sell something, somebody's like, I need 30 of those. And you're like, I need you to go 30.
Yeah, this literally just happened to me. I did a playthrough recently of Fate Samurai Remnant, which narratively that game is pretty strong. I think it's the big selling point of that game. Gameplay systems are just okay. But that would annoy the hell out of me. They just give me like all these little knickknacks and things like that, and I have no idea what their importance is. And I was like, I need gold to buy like health. I'll sell it. And then I get the quest like an hour later that's like, oh yeah, you need those things that you sold. And I'm just like, can we not do this? Like, I hate this. So if you're telling me there's a game that has an element that lets me know ahead of time, that's awesome to me.
Yeah, and that's what it is at the end of the day, right? Your narrative should provide gameplay opportunities that enhance the gameplay, and your gameplay should provide opportunities that enhance the narrative. Once they're in conjunction, once they're working for the same goal, which all parts of a game should be, then you have a goddamn video game, right? But all aspects of a video game need to be working in cohesion with each other. Music really does a good job at this. Musicians always do a good job of like providing backing tracks that fit the mood.
Yeah.
Narrative and gameplay are the same way, but sometimes these teams don't talk or they see each other separate when they don't have to be. I'm both a gameplay designer and a narrative designer. So because I'm able to look at both, I think it makes my purpose in what I write and then what I design a lot stronger.
Yeah. No, what you're saying about the music, that makes a lot of sense because of the games that have come out in the last decade, you already know this, but most of my audience might not. Nier Automata is like that game to me, where that game is like an 11 out of 10 must play for everybody, in my opinion. Because like some of the gameplay systems might not be the best, but it is the only game I have played, I feel like, in the last 10 years where the narrative, the visuals, like what's on screen, what you were playing, the game you were playing, and then the sound design itself with the music, all of it is always in sync at all times. And it is just an insane experience, because what your hands are doing, what you are seeing, what you are thinking about, and what is going into your ears is all just always on the same page. And I've been looking for a game that does that since then, and I haven't found too many of them, if at all.
Yeah, and what you're talking about is exactly perfect, right? So in writing, we call it the magic circle, right? Which is where you enter to be enveloped in the idea that you are in another world, or you're on a different experience, right?
Yes.
Games, when they work together, when everything's firing on all cylinders, you can hit that magic circle, right? That can even happen in multiplayer titles, right? If you get an ace in CS:GO, you're the protagonist now, right? That feeling of protagonism, right? Where you are feeling what the main character is, or you are feeling what the game is designed to make you feel. When you hit the peak, when you are one-to-one with it, those are definitively the best gaming experiences in my hand.
Yes. I agree. Like, I don't play too many multiplayer games, but like even when I did, like a game like Overwatch, those were always the best moments when like you get that play of the game, when everything just gels, like, you know, timers running down, music is like bumping, it's do or die time, and you land that clutch ultimate, get the play of the game, and everyone's in the comms like freaking out, like oh, I can't believe that he just did that. Like, those are the things that I remember the most about Overwatch. Like, not so much like in recent years, obviously there's been the controversies and all that. But like, to me, what controversies? No, we're too many to name.
Bill Cosby? What?
No, okay.
No, okay.
Yeah, but no, like, I can see what you mean in like multiplayer titles. Like those things, like I assume that's one of the reasons why League is such like a big game. I don't have like too many memories like that, but talking to other personalities in the E7 space, like, they all have that fondness for Riot Games for those kinds of experiences, those moments.
Yeah, and you know this personally because we both do commentary. We are creating those stories on the fly. That's why I can see them and identify them, because, you know, whether you can make villains, you can make heroes. That's what we were doing when we were talking about Marguerite at E7 World Cup, when we were saying, like, look at this person with not big spending account, well, he spends money, not a big spender, but going up against some of the giants of the game. That's just a classic David versus Goliath story that you're really weaving in that moment.
Yes.
And that helps get people involved. As I said at the beginning, that's a story for some people to latch onto. And then you create other stories for the other players for them to latch onto that if they want.
Yeah, he was definitely, aside from Pupus, like, he was the other player in the tournament with, I think, the best storyline. Like, no disrespect to Winter Wish, like, great storyline there as well. You know, Waifu Warrior making it work when other people had written it off. Still a great storyline, but like, Marguerite came in with a purpose to the tournament, which is, I want to defeat Phantom. I want to take down the former world champion, and he succeeded at that. And that was like a great narrative moment. And then like when we did the cast together, we were talking about like, hey, where does he go from there? He accomplished the goal. What's the new goal? And it's like, well, the new storyline is he's being massively outspent by everybody in a game that, you know, not necessarily, but like, you know, games like gacha games, mobile games, with PvP aspects, most people associate best players with biggest spenders. So like that was a defining storyline in that tournament, was like, hey, you don't have to spend to be the world champion of Epic 7.
You don't have to spend
a lot.
$10,000. You just have to spend a couple thousand.
Yeah, it's like it was like $1,500 or $2K. So like that's still a lot of money. Like at the end of the day, we're not gonna say it's not, but like compared to
Resident Poor Boys,
yeah, it says Resident Poor Boys. Me and Divine here ain't got a lot of capital to work with. That's impressive to me. Like that makes me feel like, hey, maybe I do have a chance. Like, because some of the people I play on ladder, man, I'm like, these guys have probably outspent me 20, 50 times, maybe even 100 times the amount of money that I put into the game. And it feels very daunting. So for me, that storyline gave me some hope. So
yeah,
narratives in games, they're important, guys. So moving on to our next topic here, our little next bullet point here. Epic 7. What do you think the Epic 7's narrative does well? Because there's a lot of like ups and downs. So before we dive into the meat and potatoes of everything, let's sing some praises of
Yeah.
this thing's narrative.
I've always talked about this a lot, right? And people think that my job is to just write words, right?
Mhm.
Which, yeah, yeah, it is. It's a lot of what my job is. But a big part of being a narrative designer is that design aspect, and it's for looking for opportunities outside of the written word. You always want to show, don't tell, right? As much as
Yes.
possible. And E7 does a pretty good job of that in some aspects. Like, even though we're 5 years into the game, Dishe, or our goddess, is still providing us with new wonders, new boons in order to help us through our journey. The Graith of Gross factor is one of them most recently, right? And seems to be very closely tied to the remnants of her blessing ever since she passed and gave away her powers to Ross, right?
Yeah.
That's an amazing story to tell, right? I had to kind of make half of it up in my head, but it makes sense when you think about it. And connecting systems like that is the purpose of a narrative designer, right? To find purpose in why or the reasoning behind events occurring is, right?
Yes.
Because E7 needed a system like that because, it's easier to get Mola than it is to get Apple stocks at this point. But that because of that, a system was created and you can tell a story with that system. E7 is a game with so many wonderful opportunities to tell those kinds of stories, and it also builds an entire world full of so many ideas and all these different varied characters exceptionally well, which I will add is incredibly hard. Other gotcha games try to stick to a very hard niche or an idea, right?
Yes.
You're either at a school or you're on a base as a mercenary camp, right? And you're trying to save the world through medical reasons, or you're an automaton living in a dangerous state where you're basically dolls working for the government with a very oppressive, hanging atmosphere that shows the quality to which corporations can throw away human lives. Yes, I did actually talk about two games there. That was both Nikkei and Limbus Company at the same
Yes.
time,
Yeah.
right? Lots of gotcha games have their niche, but none of them are like, fuck it, vampires, right? Like, they're
Yeah.
not cyborgs, vampires, dragons, whatever, who cares, right? But
Yes.
Epic 7 actually makes it feel like this world with all this happening makes sense, and then throws people from the other world, and then Yuna's here like, I got a cell phone, and you're like, what? What?
Yeah.
What is Ross gonna do with a cell phone? What is he gonna? What?
Yeah.
Like, it blends all that together really well, and nobody really questions it too much. And the Moonlight system is genius. Other versions or other potential versions of characters from other worlds is incredibly interesting, right? I've
Yes.
talked about it before, but Dark Corvus is one of my favorite characters because he has three exceptional things about him, right? You have to think about this. He's the only 5-star of a 4-star, right?
Hmm.
He's the only character who has the boss meter underneath him. He's the only
Yes.
playable hero that has the boss meter underneath him because he's that much of a threat, right? And the
Yes.
third thing, he is the only living character that is an ML of his previous counterpart, right? There is
Yes.
no character that is an ML and then
Wait,
they
there's
get to
one.
keep
There's
living.
one. There is
Okay,
one.
is it? Okay.
There's Silverblade Araminta, I believe, is.
That's
It's
the
when.
future version of her.
No, no, no. Silverblade is before she lost her leg.
Is that before she lost her?
Yes, yes.
I was told it was after. Okay.
Yeah.
Well then he gets to share that with Silverblade Araminta, but she doesn't actually get play, so she's not a real character anyway. I haven't seen her in like 6.5. I see her pulled. Sometimes people are like get spooked by her on a daily poll. Have you seen her? Have you seen her in 3 months? We got to put out milk cartons for this woman. Somebody
Yeah.
needs to find her. Like,
I was gonna say I actually play her, but I use her for Nightmare Raid, and she's the worst part of that team. So
okay. So
that's
you force her is what you said.
yeah, I force her because I don't want to spend mullahs on other characters, and I don't want a 6-star other 3-stars. This is what I'm basically saying. Basically, I plus 15 Silverblade back in the day. I did not get rid of her. I'm gonna make it work. Like
We'll find a dumping ground eventually.
Yeah, yeah, and this is my dumping ground, right? This is exactly what it is. But no, I agree with you that like the base world for Epic 7 is really strong. And I think that like part of the like it's not just I guess the narrative team, the narrative designers, but like the art designers as well. Like I think I could speak for almost anybody who plays this game regularly. Like the art direction in this game is very good, at least from like a character standpoint. Like the character designers are just on point. Characters look great. They just look cool. They look like characters that I want to know the story of, that I want to play as. Like every new release still blows me away. Like from whether it's the animations or just like even Kane, man. Kane just head to toe badass
Kane is an
character.
amazing badass design with the hammer that seems to solidify his very forceful nature, right? That's narrative, right? You know, the Order of the Shield and the Cross, they all have this unifying element, right? With the cross somewhere on their designs that makes that speak out a little bit louder. You know, characters have these things that either make them stand out or tie them together, and that's also a part of the design element that's really you can really feel and is really appreciable, and it asks interesting questions. We were talking with Tristan Wolfo earlier, and he wants to know, why doesn't Arowell wear pants? She's a knight, but she doesn't have pants as armor. Is something going on there? Is it like a movement thing? What interesting story can we tell, right? Because of the decisions characters make just by how they look.
uh, I'm gonna bring it to you. I think that's just because it looks sexy. Like,
But what does she want to be sexy? Who's she being sexy for?
these are the real
That's an
questions.
interesting. These are the real questions, right?
These-
What's Doris up to? I haven't seen Doris in 60 years too.
Yeah, they did kind of gloss over that. Like, I've been spoiler alert. I've been working on how to play Unbound Knight ROL for y'all. And I was like, Wetherick Moore, what? She's from that faction, but why? And it's like, oh, because she left Doris for reasons. And I was like, what reasons? Like, it's not just like a throwaway line, is it?
She left Doris so that she could better serve Doris. She's like, I gotta be a good knight to protect Doris, and I need to go get worldly experience to do that. By the way, she's in like the very weirdly long list of characters that got a SC change because of Crozet.
Yes. Crozet's the real homie, bro.
Crozet has handed out like 3 or 4 specialty changes. He's basically the CEO of Smilegate. He's like, you need a buff. You need a buff. That should be his real passive is, you need a buff right now.
Yeah.
3 stars, come this way. Come this way.
Yeah, exactly. No, Crozet's a character I would love to see explored more narratively. He had a bit of a moment in one of the Valentine's events, but like, you're right, he does a lot and like somehow doesn't get like main story recognition. I think it's just because
he was in the slime event too, if you remember.
Yeah, he was. Yes, exactly. Yeah, he has a lot of.
He's trying.
Yeah, he has a lot of screen time for a character that I think most of the player base is kind of written off and kind of dismissed. Which that's not marrying that concept we're talking about. Where my expectation is that Crozet is a better character than he actually is because of how involved he is in so much important stuff in the game.
He needs the 4-star specialty change. He needs to be the first one to get one.
Oh, I hope
so. Because it's weird how he is. He's like my favorite character from My Hero, Ida. Where like Ida is not the big 3. He's not Deku, Bakugo, or Todoroki, but he keeps showing up in places where you're like, I mean, it's cool you're here, but why? It's like his superpower isn't his speed, but the fact that he's fast enough to keep in frame with the camera as it changes between all the real protagonists.
Yeah, that's something that I think we could talk about a little bit later. But just like there are definitely in anime a lot of characters that don't live up to the potential. They're just kind of there. Yeah, but again, we could talk about that.
I'm confused. I thought we were talking about E7's narrative, but suddenly you just started talking about
anime. It's complete about anime.
I was gonna say all of what is Luna's faction again?
Luna's faction, the dragons from
No, not Luna. Sorry, I always get her confused with the other blue ranger, Yuna.
Not Luna.
Yuna.
Reingar.
Yeah, like their most relevant thing was being the faction you picked for the brawl mode.
This is true. I mean, I would say the most relevant story element for Reingar is actually Corinne and her ties to Celine, but that's probably about it.
When was the last time we saw Celine?
Valentine's event, like everything else.
I'm sitting here, bro. There are times where I'm like, Yuna, you have a phone. Why isn't Rand just like calling people up, being like, yeah, I need backup.
Okay, so we sung its praises, but what do we think now is some of the things that Epic 7's narrative doesn't do super well? What are some of your frustrations, generally speaking? Because after this, we're going to talk about each of the episodes on what we liked and disliked about them, like in a little bit more detail.
It's fine. Nothing.
Nothing? No? Yeah.
Nothing. Yeah, it's a great. Everybody loves E7's story, Pat. I don't know why you're asking me for complaints about the critically acclaimed, award-winning. No, okay, so let's actually
I
talk.
was gonna,
Let's
I was
actually
gonna
talk
say
about the.
you're pulling my leg here because even I have some complaints. There's no way you've read this whole story. If you've read it, you have complaints. I promise you.
I'll keep it short, actually, because we do have to be worried about time. Somebody's already falling asleep on their bus, right? It's the next stop. Your stop is the next stop. Don't fall asleep, okay? All right. A lot of its best content is either time gated or vaporware. A
Really?
lot of the moments we really like are either literally wait a week for the next episode of the Nightmare, the Moonlight Stories, right?
Yes.
Or it is, hey, here's the seasonal content you really like that's an April Fool's joke. It'll come back in a year, right?
Yeah, that's true. Like the
You,
Christmas event with Ilanav,
yep.
learning to cook with Ilanav. It was like the best character development ever for that character.
Yeah. And then or it's gone forever, like the Guilty Gear event, where most people don't realize that the reason you don't see Ravi anymore is because Soul Bad Guy eviscerated every atom of her being.
This is true. This is
Most
true.
new players aren't or don't know that and will never know that because
Or
that content
Xeno.
is
Yeah,
gone forever.
Soul Bad Guy sent Xeno to the Shadow Realm.
Yes, even I didn't know that. I'm gonna be real, because
Yeah.
I never saw that event. I didn't know that. Right? That's really cool, awesome stuff about that are moments that we could talk about. Now, should all the content be upfront and always available? No, but at least some part of it needs to be that. Like some part of the hype moments need to be content that is in the base game. And as we'll talk about pretty soon, the base game doesn't nearly have the highs and lows of the side content. I think that's a big part of the problem, right?
Yeah.
And the second thing I'll say is that for a world with so much content and so many of these different places, it does not have too many characters that they actually do well, right? Like
Yes.
we talked about factions that don't get the love of others, Yuna's faction is one of them, right? But also, we only pop in to see some of these ML universes every once in a while that people want to hear more about, like ML Yuna. And then we gotta wait potentially months to get a Moonlight story of it, where it's just like, think about that disconnect, right? Abyssal Euphene has come out. Cool looking character design with a cool, interesting story. How many months, not even days or weeks, how many goddamn months is it gonna be till you get to learn about what that character is actually about?
A while. Yeah, no, you're right. You're nailed it on the head. Like Reingar is like a pretty perfect example because there's a lot of interesting ideas with just within the Reingar faction. Never hear from them ever again. Adley, for example, what's the deal with Tenebria? Like he was basically like had this fling with Tenebria where he was kind of like thinking like, oh, maybe I'm into bad girls, and it made him start to question like maybe am I on the wrong side? Never explored again. Fighter Maya is an artificial being. Well, we never explore the concepts of what it's like for auxiliary lots or Fighter Maya to be these
We go
artificial
with
dolls.
Inos instead. And
Yeah.
only Inos.
Yeah, only Ino's got that, but like those were like storylines that just never never materialized. My girl Cirilla can't find a man. They don't explain why. Apparently people don't want to date her. Why is that?
I could think of no reasons why she doesn't have. As one of her fans, Cirilla is a character that should only have fans, if you know what I'm saying. Like she should.
Yeah.
I'm
Only
very clever. I'm a writer. Yeah.
I was gonna say, only she should only have fans with
Yeah,
Flan.
very.
Only Flans. Only Flans is her fan. Okay.
That's the plan. Only Flan's plan, right?
Yeah,
This is gonna help Policia's PR massively.
no. All right, so jumping into the meat and potatoes, we're gonna basically like give our impressions now on episodes 1 through 5. We'll talk about the highs, the lows, and then I guess at the end we'll kind of wrap up with how we rank them from 1 to 5. Like, what's your personal list versus mine? All right, so let's talk about episode 1. And what do you think narratively it does very well, and what does it not do so well?
It is a great introduction that sets up so many ideas, and then we don't use any. Like it's what we were just talking about. Where it's just like, what's Charon up to? He said he'd be back.
Yeah, no.
There's like 3 forms of Tenebria. She just gave up after that. She's just like, whatever. I'll let blind. Like, think about this, right? Think about this for a second, right? Tenebria is all about chaos and causing this mental anguish and these deep-rooted pains throughout people, right?
Yes.
What if she was the one manipulating the fears and all of the insecurities that went on in Teiyu instead of Lua randomly?
Yeah.
I mean, then Lua could have been a real character with a real objective because as I asked you earlier, and I asked many people this, what was Lua's objective? Why did she do what she did? And the answer I got from most people was, I don't know, I pre-ban her.
We'll talk about that. I actually know the answer to it, and it's pretty crappy. I guess we could save it rather than wait till we get to episode 4. But it's to be the best. Lua's entire character is so boring because basically people praised her as being the best. She liked the praise.
No one ever was.
Yeah, she loved the fact that people told her she was the best. And if there was anything that could potentially be better than her, she needed to be better than that, so only she could get the praise. So literally her entire like storyline in that episode is just, hey, this like evil god spoke to me and was like, hey, if you listen to me, you could be the best. And she was like, okay, lol.
Pog. Yeah, pog. Yeah. It's like, that's a great starting point for a story. Was it developed in the main episode she was in? No, but just like that, we should move on from this corpse of the discussion to episode 2.
Oh no, I wanted to talk about a little bit more about episode 1. Just because you're 100% right about
murder.
No. Episode 1, like world building is the best. I think it's what got us all, at least got me to pay attention to the narrative. The fact that it's called Epic 7 because it is the 7th basically world line, the 7th time like through the loop where Roz finally succeeds to defeat the Archdemon.
Genius. Run this shit back a couple times.
Genius concept. Great world building, great ideas. There's 7 heirs, right? We barely ever use them. Like, when's the last time?
Can you name the 7 heirs?
It's what? Roz, Issaria, Crow, Ludwig, Yuna, and I don't even know. Maybe that's all there is for heirs? Maybe it's not 7 heirs, but those are the heirs.
Okay, cool. Could you name what Issaria's guardian is?
Issaria's guardian? It's not. Is it? It's not. I actually don't even know.
No one knows. No one knows. Remember, you have to look into the game.
It's either
you know what? Pat, no. Pat from the editing future will do this, right? Go, editing Pat, look at me. Look at me in the eyes.
Yeah.
Show them your reputation and how you have 4 out of 5 for collected guardians. That missing one is Issaria. There are 5 heirs. We only know 4 guardians. We don't even know who the 5th one is.
Yeah, wait, no, actually, is that true? Because there's Krauss is Siegfried. His actual
Krauss is Siegfried, yeah.
His is Siegfried.
His S3, and then Ludwig's is Kromkraz, right?
Yeah, so that means, is her Zayon by default? Because Arky's is Raz and Yuna's is Kazaran. I don't know.
It is Zayon.
Is it
No,
Zayon?
I think it is Zayon. I think it is Zayon.
We
can't remember the own story or our own story.
Yeah, that's exactly because it hasn't been explored in 5 years. That's the whole point I'm trying to make. You remember?
Wait, what's the missing guardian then?
But what's her name?
Who's it for?
I don't even know.
Who are we? What's going on, Pat? I'm scared. What's going on?
If there's only 5 heirs and 5 guardians and one is tied to an S3, we'll never get that guardian, so we just don't get the reputation. I don't know. The point is, like, we have concepts like the Nocturne, like the Nocturnes and stuff, that was like never really explored outside of like Kisei in, again, a throwaway side story, right?
Was it that they don't die?
Yeah.
Or something? But they can be killed?
Yeah. I don't know. Like I said, like whatever her name is, like Ludwig's guardian is like Saria or whatever. She's on Radiant forever.
People die when they killed? Okay, yeah.
The point is, there is a lot of great concepts in episode 1, and almost none of them are explored. That is, like, I think the biggest weakness of it. Alright, now moving on to Godkiller. Straze, Strays, whatever you want to call him.
Episode 2 has the best villains. Once again, people are missing their buses before. They're missing their alimony payments now. It's getting worse by the second. Episode 2 has the best villains. We love Straze, right? We love for men's hair care and shampoo, and we always love Mort, right?
Mort is episode 3. Mort is episode 3. We're talking about 2.
Oh God, I hate this game. I thought we talked about this. I thought we talked about before. So we get Straze, right? Straze's there.
Yes, Lilius is the other. Lilius and Straze are the main antagonists.
Oh yeah. Okay, that's what I meant to say. Lilius is actually a good villain.
Yeah.
She gets fleshed out more because she won a contest. And Straze is a great villain
Yes.
because he's actually intimidating. He feels like a threat, and he actually has. Think about like this. He's one of the only characters that does something to the protagonist, right? Like Archdemon Mercedes just fought Ross and then became his waifu and was just like, oh, thank you. Like that mofo Strays was just like, I had that dog in him, right? He was ready to get.
Yes.
He's ready to get stuff done. Even Belian kind of fell to the wastelands, right? Because we just beat Belian didn't have any consequences that happened. Like the biggest consequence of Belian really is actually Politis and what she did to the members of CIS, right? Or
Yes.
C's or whatever. Yeah, that organization, right? Where she permanently messed up and brainwashed Rin and I believe the Fire Archer Litica. I believe she permanently brainwashed. No.
Oh
Litica
yeah.
was angry that they weren't brainwashed. Who was it? Who was brainwashed? It was. Oh, it was
Says
Says.
says says says
Says.
says.
Says. And we try so hard to remember this goddamn stuff.
But I just want you to
Says.
know this is one of the most confusing parts of this, like right, like in episode
Yeah.
3, like the brainwashing with Politis, because I was like, dude, what is this even doing? This is a pretty good segue, I guess, into 3 because I agree with you. 2, I think, is the overall like it delivers on some of the shortcomings of episode 1 with just strong villains. I think like that's the best thing I can say about it. Is like Lilius and Straze are iconic characters with good writing. The first half of the story is garbage, but once Straze shows up, that episode is just straight fire. Everything with Vivian, Kowarik, Pavel, like all that is fire. Violet, his relationship with Lilius.
I'm going to be honest with you. I wish Straze got more, and I feel that he won't get more because listen to me. I can predict the future. It happens all the time. You're going to get a hot dad body Straze in like a suit. He's going to be in like one of those 1950s like gangster suit where it's just like white with the pin crosses, and then he's going to look like the editor of a newspaper, and that's going to be fashion Straze, right? For the fashion storyline.
Yeah.
And he's going to be so cool, we'll forget about ever expounding on Straze's storyline and his connection to Rowana and all the stuff he wanted to do.
It sucks too because Straze's still alive. Like Lilius is dead? Question mark? Because they don't actually confirm.
Oh, she's
it.
coming back with amnesia.
They literally like left that open, never explored. Straze just on another planet with Rowana. Plotline never explored, right? Mm-hmm. So that's what I'm saying. Like episode 2 is like probably, in my opinion, narratively the best episode.
It does do something great. It does do something great we're forgetting, which is that your homies from episode 1 come back to help in episode 2.
Yes.
Right? That's the episode where they...
the heirs show up. Crow sends Charles as a proxy, but like everyone else shows up. Right?
Yeah.
Like they show up to help. So yeah, the climax of episode 2 I think is the real highlight of E7, right? In terms of narrative. Like for me it is because like you don't think so?
No, because you left out the actual highlight. I think it's actually unrecorded history.
Really?
Yeah, I think unrecorded history, because it's interesting because once again, it's building on Ross's relationship with other people. He's doing something unheroic, which goes against his character, but falls into the narrative of him kind of falling out of grace of the god and losing his goddess's power now that she's gone from the world and trying to find a place for his own in it. He's actually a little bit more serious. Mm-hmm. Arky has to take a back turn. You get to see how some of the characters are without this big drama, without having to be influenced by the world ending, so you actually get to see them in their day-to-day lives, and you get to see him repair and start to heal some of the relationships that were broken because of his actions at the beginning of the story, such as with Iseria and also with Charles. If you remember, Charles was very pissed with Ross for a while after the death of his queen, and following into, that's why episode 2 has such a great moment when Charles shows up to help Ross, because that's kind of the full restoration of that arc, where it's like, okay, I'm good with you now, you're my homie, right?
Yes. Yeah, okay, I got you, yeah. So I think the biggest knock against episode 2 is, like I said, slow start, in my opinion. And then other than that, it just doesn't answer those questions that I wanted to answer from episode 1. But otherwise, like, as a 1-2 punch, episode 1 and 2 is actually, like, fairly good, I feel like. I think it's only when we get to episode 3 where things start to go off the rails. Because, like, there's a lot of great ideas in episode 3, and they're all executed terribly except for the character of Politis, in my opinion. That's just my personal opinion, but Politis and everything with Edda was the show stealer for me in that episode. It was the only thing that I was interested in that I thought was well done, well executed. And I think everything else... Actually, that's a lie. Alencia, I forgot about Alencia and Senya. That storyline is also fantastic. I actually cried to see after what happened to Senya. Like, I was like, damn. Like, that's the only other emotional beat I think in Epic 7. Like, Straze killing Raz was number 1, where I went, damn, with this game. What happened to Senya, that broke me, man. That one was like, nope.
Yeah, I wish I could feel more for Kawazu, but he felt like an idiot throughout his whole story. We're like, bro, what are you doing? It's like, we won't accept help from people that aren't from Meldrick. And you're like, well, everything's on fire. Well, everything's like you live.
That's a gang.
No, look, you live in a volcano and things are on fire more than usual, and you're not asking for help. Okay, buddy. Sure, pal.
No, that's what I was going back to. That like that's the beginning of episode 2, which again, it's just awful. It's absolutely terrible. Like in episode 3, almost everything feels like it's on fire all the time in that episode.
Like it just feels like at some point Ross just like people are like, so you saved the continent. What makes you think you could save us? It's just like,
I saved the
what's
world.
in danger? Our continent. Oh.
Yeah. Right.
Oh, yeah.
No, there's a lot in episode 3 that is just like, it's miserable. Like, Urvalin has no emotional payoff. Ilanav has no real payoff, I feel like, in that story. Mort is done dirty. Like, his resolution, not really particularly that great.
You know, some people don't remember that he died. Like, some people are like, didn't he also fall off a cliff? Like, people legitimately don't even remember.
No, he died. The whole time Mort existed, this is spoilers, which, by the way, if you're watching a podcast or listening to it, and we're talking about the story anyway, you have to expect some spoilers. But my man was 50% injury from the start. That was basically, he started at 50% injury. He just didn't know it because he didn't look at his life bar and see all that brown.
You didn't see all that murky brown, red, whatever.
That was it. Like, it was just like, you don't understand. From fighting injury Setalencia for the last 1,000 years, you actually have no max HP. So when Raz uses his S2, you just die. You just didn't realize it. I was like, wow, way to tear down arguably, like, your best villain. Like, this man could have gone toe-to-toe with Straze from a narrative perspective, and you just... I don't know, man. We had to get to Skynet. We needed Skynet to be the villain because she was in the PV.
She was cool. Move on. Like, It felt like Mort should have been the final villain, but Belian was here.
Yeah.
So we got to get back to the real stories.
Yeah, Mort should have been the ML5 all along, right? Like, no offense, I love God Queen Belian, bro. That's one of my favorite characters to play in Epic 7. But
praise the gamer girl.
Yeah, but man, narratively, it should not have been Belian. Like, I understand that Politis had the biggest emotional beats in the story, and it should have had the biggest emotional payoff, but, like, I really just think, like, Belian just wasn't worth it at the end of the day, and Mort just really, again, wasn't there. Like, that's the biggest sin, I think, of episode 3. Great ideas, and outside of Politis's arc to an extent, because obviously it resolves with Belian, and how Senya goes out, those are, like, the only 2 really well-executed ideas here. Like, Urvalin is terrible. Making Luna basically be like, oh, I'm just like Urvalin is also terrible, because if Urvalin doesn't stick the landing, then fan favorite Luna is obviously not sticking the landing, which is really upsetting. So, yeah.
Yeah, and it kind of feels weird because, you know, stuff in episode 3, a lot of it gets its potential fulfilled later, right? Where, like, it was obvious that, like, what they wanted to do with Urvalin is what they ended up doing with the Game of Princes side story, right?
Yes.
And what they wanted to do with Kawazu is what they ended up doing with Inferno Kawazu in the Moonlight stories, right? So it seems like there's a lot of ideas that they want to put into these episodes because they always have to include a lot of characters, but they never get to fully develop them until it goes to side content. And that's a part of the struggle with E7 in general, right? Is that you have to introduce characters and they have to have some hook or some kind of narrative thing to get people behind them when they come up, but we can't always give... Yeah. We either can't give the reason till later, like with Abyssal Euphine, or we rush to give them stuff and it doesn't end up working, like with a lot of the characters in episode 3.
One of the things I wish they did, because they did in older episodes, where you get those little, like, S routes on things, where you could get those side stories and those little context clues, like, that would be great. I think the fact that newer chapters are constrained to 8 to 10 levels and they try and tell the whole story in that, I would be okay if they just had supplemental stuff that just supplemental cutscenes that are not mandatory to watch, just that accompanied each chapter. I think that would it would go a long way in smoothing over a lot of these issues where things are just no payoffs or just underdeveloped, like overall.
If you want my 2 cents, obviously I don't work for this company, hallelujah. But if you want my 2 cents, we have a dead period of like 6 months at the beginning of every year. Build up the stories of your cast then. Like, well, I know we get some of the side stories for these characters, but really just have like an intermediate episode and just build up their stories and set the pieces before Ross or Ran or Auden arrives to be the protagonist there, so we have some preamble for the story you want to tell.
Yeah, no, that's actually a good segue into episode 4, because Rand's side story was like kind of made up to be that way. It gave you the emotional like beat to try and link it back to Roz, like, oh, he's Vildred's teacher and he's going to be this central figure of episode 4. They gave us those emotional beats that pay off to start, and then we get to episode 4 and it's like, surprise, he's not the main character. He doesn't really have much to do with the narrative other than this guy that's trying to resurrect a god. The girl that likes him, he likes that girl, and that's
he's a cuck king. Yeah, he's a cuck king. That's
that's exactly it. Like, episode 4, to me at least, narratively fails on almost every single aspect, because
what?
Yeah, it just What do you mean what?
What are you talking about?
No, okay, so let's.
KU is everyone's favorite character, Sue.
Yeah, all right. So just like real quick, my quick like rap sheet here. Roz is basically irrelevant to the story, but that would be okay. Ran is set up to be the main character, but has no real relevancy in the plot. Auden is worthless in her own story, it feels like, for the most part. Teiyu is just there to create artificial angst. Lua has no motivations. Arunca and Pera are literally just Red, Cecilia, and Luna from the previous story. There's like no actual changes. Hua Young is set up to be this great mentor. Doesn't ever really go anywhere, other than Ken just showing up in the 11th hour going like, hey, master, what's good? Like, go ahead.
Yeah, Rand serves a similar purpose here to what Kuwarik did for leading into his episode, right? Because you remember Kuwarik was a big lead up, and he was even a part of the reputation side quests of like, get hyped for this guy, right? But it never feels like it works out well, because you don't just introduce one character, you have to introduce the world, really. And they always do it. Once again, they did the same thing with Green Violet, right?
Yeah.
Where they try to introduce his part of the world, but I just feel like one character isn't enough to set up these complicated things where they're like, this kingdom is warring with this kingdom. Furious is just trying to protect his daughter, but also he's furious. Get it? Because he's furious. And and like all these other things that they want to set up where they're just like, you gotta understand, like, Alencia is really old, but she looks young, but she's really old, but also she's really sad. Like, we set up so much. We try to, that's a big part of why episode 3 had this past and future stuff. It's really hard and confusing to get everything in. And it feels like episode 4 was the part where they said, screw it, we'll do it as we go along, right? That's why we had Ken come back. He's like, good old home of kind of China. And you're like, sure. And then like we have this part where like he's just like, oh, here's my injured master that can barely function, Hua Young, who will not dominate the meta for the next 8 to 10 months. And then you've also got to deal with the narrative ramifications where you're writing a character where like literally there are moments where I literally wanted to scream fuck off, because Hua Young's like, I may be weak and I may not have what it takes, but I'll defeat you no matter what. And you're like, Hua Young, you are literally making this game unplayable. What are you talking about? Like, what are you even on right now?
Yeah, no, that's 100%. Like, there's other like very puzzling decisions, because like they try to sandwich characters in there. Like Apocalypse Ravi is just there.
I think Apocalypse Ravi is unironically the best part, because she just shows up with an axe and says, fuck it, I'll fix it.
Yep, no, you're right. Her inclusion is welcome, but like it's so out of place because it's just like Harato's there and there's a resistance, and
Oh, you remember?
Surin and Tempest are now all of a sudden
You,
the same character, and we don't need an eye patch anymore
we
because
don't need an
it
eye
healed.
patch.
It
I just
healed.
it
It
was
just
just
healed.
healed.
My eye just healed. Don't you understand?
You remember when Cartusia was just like, I may have been your friend in episode 1, but now racism, and Ross is like,
Oh
bro, we're
man.
friends, and he's just
Oh my
like, yeah,
god.
we're
Don't even get me
friends, yeah.
started on Arya, man.
You forgot about it.
I know. I did
Oh,
forget.
racist! God, racism.
Arya is a blight on the game's narrative. This character exists,
And it's PG rating.
yes, and it's PG rating. This is true. Arya is literally just. It's like we can't mix the bloods. It's literally her entire storyline.
Those disgusting muddle bloods.
Yeah.
Muggle bloods.
Oh my god. Everything is just can't trust anyone that's not a shadow elf because it taints our bloodline.
Listen, you gotta call her uncle. You gotta call her Uncle Pera, right? When she's sitting there like, let me tell you something about those gosh darn it, those us shadow elves are the only ones, them stinky humans, them humans with no rights, with no reason, always causing trouble, ungrateful little pieces of shit. I swear, hang them now, hang them right now.
Yeah, and it also just sucks that like Zio just shows up 11th hour, is our big bad, doesn't really have any... We have no connection.
If it didn't work with Evelyn, it's gotta work now!
Yes. And then Zahak just, like, bites it off screen? Like, what is... Like, Episode 4 might be, narratively, the worst experience I've ever had with a mobile game. Like, it's pretty terrible.
There's a point where you're like, why am I going to be afraid of this big space demon that you're highlighting when a 10-year-old kid said, but I'm greedier, so you're my little bitch now?
Yes. It's so bad. Like, and I guess now, because we're running kind of long, we're going to go into episode 5 real fast. Thoughts on it so far, and what are you hoping to see from it in the future?
Why is he pretending to be a ranger? Once again, future Pat, put it up. He's not even that's not how you hold a bow. And you're the worst. It's amazing to me. It's amazing to me that we made a worse character than Auden. I hated Auden. When Prop Boy started calling her Sadin, that was the best moment of my life. I was so happy. I was like, this has to be the community name of Sadin. This is how she makes me feel every time, right? She's called Sadin, and I was like, this is the worst it can get. And I was like, please tell me she's not going to be a protagonist in the next episode. Because it was clear they're trying to set her up, and then they dodged that bullet. And then I'm like, okay, it's Rand. I really would prefer it's Ross. There's so many interesting things to talk about Ross. Just give him his god powers back. Just give him the moment where they're like, Ross is pathetic and he gets the boost and he's just like, actually, my S2 now dual attacks the whole team. Literally die in a hole.
It's like it's the all-out attack from Persona.
Yeah. Just, now I've got you.
Yeah.
But like,
I've been waiting for this.
By my light. But yeah. All that stuff's happening, and I'm like, there's no way they can make it any worse. And then that little shit appears, and I'm like, oh, he's like Teiyu and Auden combined. Because he can do everything perfectly, but he's also edgy for no real reason. And it's just like, please stop, I want to die.
The Shadow...
I beg for death. I feel like a vampire. I'm actually siding with the vampires, because just like them, my pain is also unending. As I have to go on enduring this for millennia.
Yeah, there's basically 2 storylines at work here. There's the
3.
Okay, there's Rand and then the Dagger Sakaar one. I guess like
4. Dagger Sakaar, Rand's party, the Vampire Slayers, the Shadow Elves.
Okay, yeah. Oh, you're right. Brieg, technically, yeah. Brieg's Shadow Elves faction is another one. I guess you could Fumir kind of solo by herself, but for the most part, like, Rand is somehow just annoying, even though he was super cool in episode 4. Like, honestly, Ahmed's, like, the only good part about that. Like, Arya still sucks. Eligos and actually Dagger Sakaar is a welcome change. I actually really like them. They're pretty much the highlight of episode 5 for me. They're the best. The Slayers, just in general, I think they're all pretty good for the most part. So right now, I'm pretty on the up and up with episode 5. I think this episode has a lot that it needs to prove after 3 being very mid and 4 being just downright one of the worst mobile game stories like of all time, I feel like.
I think it's absolutely a travesty, if I'm going to be honest with you.
Yeah.
I'm not a big fan of episode 5 because we talked about before. Episode 3 felt like episode 2.5. This feels like episode 4.5. So it always feels like the pacing is bogged down by that. And I just, as you said, some of the characters from last episode are less cool than they were. And the new characters they've introduced, I think, are cool, but just like, I don't know if they're going to do right. Like, how am I supposed to believe they're going to do Kane right when they messed up Mort?
Yeah,
Because it feels like the same scenario where like there's a real endgame villain, but Kane's so much cooler. But we already know who the final boss of episode 5 is. It's the leader of the Shadow Elves, right? So like Kane's gonna have to bite it in what I would imagine is a similar way to Mort, where like he finally gets to show up, be cool, and gets put down. Like as a designer, I can see the stepping stones ahead of time, and I feel like it's a lot of the same, and I just don't know how to feel about that.
Yeah, I agree with you. Like one of the things that really annoys me, and they did it with episode 3 with Bellion, and they're doing it I think again with episode 5, but like one of the complaints, if you go to a movie theater, right, and you sit down before the movie starts, right, you go to the cinema, and the trailer comes on, right, the trailer should make me interested to see your movie. It should not tell me what your movie is. Like, it should not give me the whole plot line and hit all of the interesting or great beats of your story. Episode 3, the PV for that, having Bellion ominously at the end and having Bellion as the icon for the damn story chapter select for episode 3 gave away everything, and it sucked. And now whoever mysterious shadow lady is at the start of the episode 5 login, the PV, if that's the final boss, man, like, you got to do better, guys. Like, don't give me the ending. I don't want to know the ending, right? It just cheapens the experience.
It cheapens the experience, yeah.
All right, so real quick, ranking on of all the episodes so far, 1 through 5. What do you think? Best to worst?
I think the best is Unrecorded History. And as a side note, please keep using that one. I don't know if it's how many writers Epic 7 has, but that one guy who did the April Fool's event where he made the joke about if this event it doesn't go well, I might not have a job. That guy's great. Keep that guy employed. You got a winner with that one. But Unrecorded History at the top, and then I would say episode 2, 3, 1, 5, 4.
5, 4? Okay. So for me, I would go, it's tough, 2 or 1, probably. I'll say 2 because I think it has some better executed moments. It's got one of the best moments. I would say 2, then 1. Currently 5 and 3 are kind of in a deadlock. Like, I think 5 has more potential than 3. So I'm going to say 5, 3, and then 4 is absolutely way at the bottom. So yeah, that's my personal ranking right now.
Yeah.
All right. So we've talked a lot about all the narratives here, but just real quickly before we wrap up here, because this has been going on a bit long, that one guy in the comments always says you want the longer than usual podcast experience. This is your podcast.
This is your fault.
Yeah, it is your fault. So Divine, we talked about like earlier, like I talked about how Nier has this great narrative like experience in a game, at least to me. For the people who are listening, what are some games that have great narratives that you think that I should play, as well as the listeners? Because like I know you really, really love this stuff.
We could start out real simple. Have you played the original Nier? Because I like it better than Automata.
Replicant, right, is the remake of it. I started it. The combat's a little hard for me to get into, but like I really should go back and finish it.
It's jank as hell. I actually played the original on PS3 because the true experience to me, the mini story there, and I'll talk about a couple mini stories of the development here as I go through my favorite titles because I'm a psycho like that. So the PS3 and the Xbox versions of the original Nier have different protagonists.
Yes, I do know that.
So the Xbox One has the young boy, and then has an older man for the PS3 because basically the localizers were like, it's the same thing with Kirby where there's like America gets mean Kirby. They're like, America doesn't want to play some young tweak femboy. They want a big, rigid old man, right? So that's how we got Tager to be the protagonist. And I actually like that story because it's just him going, my goddamn daughter the whole time, just like fucking shouting at people. I think that's a great experience. So the original Nier, but we've also talked about, and you were playing a game I recommended, Citizen Sleeper, which is coming out with its second title soon. Citizen Sleeper, excellent recommendation for anyone who likes D&D, who likes that kind of format, but then wants the cyberpunk flavor on top. I played Cyberpunk 2077. Some people like it. I feel like it lacks a lot of the cyberpunk flavor of asking those really important questions like, what does it mean to have a digital body, to completely lose connection and kind of like embrace the mainframe and the idea that you now live in data
Yeah.
and possibly forever? It embraces those ideas, does well with them. I think it's a great title. So if you feel like Cyberpunk 2077 didn't give you your fill, Citizen Sleeper is great. Deathmark is a really good one.
Hmm.
It's a really interesting series. It's called Spirit Hunter Deathmark because once the game started getting popular, they called them the Spirit Hunter series, or I think the Deathmark series, one or the other. It has Deathmark, Deathmark 2, and then Deathmark 3, which comes out later this year. They're fantastic Japanese visual novels that do well with horror, putting people in a place. I think it really fits for the spooky time of year, which by the time this is uploaded will have just passed. But still, enjoy it. Great horror visual novel series alongside Paranorma Site, The Seven Mysteries of Honjo, which is one game I recommended you to play on stream. Very simple. Once again, it's a horror game with JoJo
Oh,
stands.
oh no.
If you say, I can't say anymore, but like, think about all the interesting things that you would have to think about if you had a stand. How do I use it? What do I do with it? It is that. It is a battle royale in a horror flavor with JoJo stands. Please enjoy it.
Ooh,
It does
that sounds
very
really,
interesting
really
things.
fun.
Yeah, it does also a lot of interesting things mechanically. Obviously, I'd love to go into these series full on, but that would spoil them. So I'm just giving my recommendations. 13 Sentinels Aegis Rim, which is one that you're going to be holding up a
Yeah,
copy of in a couple seconds here.
yeah,
You're
that's
planning to play on stream.
yeah. We're gonna go through this bad boy on stream at some point, probably either later in the month of November or in December. So if you want to check out my Twitch stream, which will be linked in the description, we'll go through this visual novel together. I have heard nothing but praise from this. This has gotten high praise from a lot of my friends, as well as a lot of people in the gaming industry, as like one of the best stories in gaming.
Yeah. By the way, it was supposed to be 15 Sentinels Aegis Rim. Um, but a big part of the development happened during COVID.
Yeah.
So the writer kept writing and making more characters, and they eventually sent someone to his house so that he would stop faxing them more expanded lore of the game because they couldn't fit it. They
They're
literally
just like,
had
we
to send
gotta, we
someone to
gotta
stop
ship
them.
it. Yeah, we gotta do
Yeah, we
the
got to
description.
ship it. We got to ship it. Yeah, you can't keep adding everything. Wonderful game. One of my favorite narrative moments. Not really a spoiler, so don't worry too much about it here. Basically, you have to fulfill certain conditions to go through a character's story. And one of my favorite characters, you go through the beginning of his story,
Mm-hmm.
and it sets a lot of interesting mysteries and questions. And then they go, "Hey, you have to beat everyone else up to 90% to see the rest of this guy." And I'm like, "Holy shit, you goddamn tease." What a tease. You got me on that one. That's really interesting. Once again, another title that came from the DS recently got a release on Steam, so you can get it. It's on sale right now. I don't know if it'll still be on sale. And it was written by one of the greats, the author or the writer behind the Phoenix Wright series, Ghost Trick Phantom Detective. A
Mm.
seriously great game. You are a dead spirit. You have ghost powers to manipulate objects like a poltergeist, and you've one night until dawnbreak in which you will disappear forever to find out who murdered you, why, and potentially dig deep into the depths of a much greater mystery.
Ooh, that sounds like a fun one. Also.
Yeah. And the last game I'll say, of course, because I have to say it, are my games. Goddamn, you gotta play my games. I got Pat will link to some of the upcoming places where I am releasing. Hopefully by a week or two from now, I will have released my visual novel that is basically Clerks meets Boondocks. It's four black guys stuck in a bodega for the day, trying to figure out how to spend time and shoot the shit. You have a couple screenshots of that, which has been an interesting process to go through. That visual novel will come out in a week or two, and by the end of the year, I'm hoping to put out my big visual novel, Molly Moves On, a
Yeah, you've
narrative
been working on
about,
this for a while. Yeah.
yes, a magical girl in her early 30s, late 20s, trying to figure out what she wants to do with life as she is smoking weed, hanging out with her best friends, getting drunk as hell at her friend's wedding, and trying to move on from the fact that all of her villains are now either have successful careers, all of her allies are being held as paragons of good social and work ethics and what a woman should be, and she's just like, I don't give a fuck about that. I just want to punch dinosaurs, man. That's just rad as hell.
Yeah, when you
But
told
she's
me about that concept originally, I was like, huh, That's never been done before. I would love to see how that pans out.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
So yeah. I'm working on a lot of stuff. I already have some games I put out, but thank you for having me on, and thank you to the one guy who actually listened all the way here to the end. You're a champion, even though you did miss your stop on the station. Yes, you're actually not even a station. Sorry, I apologize. You're supposed to get off on the plane. You're now on a connecting flight to the Bermuda. Good luck with that, buddy.
Thank you so much, Divine, for coming on. Divine is always a riot, the homie. I love talking to this man. He's the best. Again, check out his stuff down in the video's description. If everything goes the way I think it will, by the way, Divine will return as next week for the Sue Talks. Again, if everything pans out correctly, I will have not only Divine on, but Valky and several other high-end Epic 7 personalities, high-ranked players. And we'll be doing a Q&A session asking whatever burning or crazy or silly questions you guys actually want to ask. So in the comments below, let me know what you want me to ask them. No question is too stupid. You could ask me the dumbest thing ever. If I think it's a riot, we'll ask it for them in the next edition of Sue Talks. If you want to do something serious or something about the meta and RTA, any of that, would love to hear from you. I'm sure Divine would love to hear your questions as well. As always, enjoy the rest of your day, the rest of your week, and I'll catch you on the next one. Don't forget to check out Divine now. Bye-bye.
All right, bye, everybody. We love you. We love you.